Well, everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and take a look at the iPhone 14 Pro and compare it against the iPhone 11 and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now, I'll leave some phones linked down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, there are obviously quite a few differences here, and if you have all the money, definitely the 14 Pro is the better way to go. But the iPhone 11, which came out in 2019, if you're familiar with the channel, I've been hyping up this phone like crazy. I think this has been one of the best releases of any iPhone, the 2019 iPhones in general. This was a $699 phone at the time, and this was a pretty big price decrease from the previous generation, which was very interesting. This phone on the front had a 6.1-inch IPS panel on the front. Now, definitely not that great of an IPS panel. I feel like Apple could have done a little bit of a better job at the time, but they've done better since then, so I have to give them a lot of credit there. You still have a notch on the iPhone 11, pretty thick bezels compared to the 14 Pro. The resolution is lower on this display, doesn't get as bright as the 14 Pro, and there's no ProMotion on this display either, but it's still an okay display. I mean, you can buy this phone for like $300, probably less than $300 now, so it's definitely not the most expensive phone of all time. The 14 Pro, on the other hand, has a 6.1-inch, so the same size, Super Retina XDR OLED panel. So this thing is the same size, but it's kind of like a little bit of a different thing because it feels so much smaller because it doesn't have as much thick bezel around it. Now, we also don't have a notch, but we still have like the dynamic island, which is almost like a disconnected notch. It's like you might as well have just kept the notch there. Now, it adds some purpose, but it's really not that big of a deal. The big thing though is the ProMotion. The 120 hertz, the smoothness factor behind it seems very smooth, and it still holds up very, very well. So from my standpoint, that is easily one of the biggest things here, and one of the reasons why the iPhone 14 Pro is that much better than the iPhone 11. Now, in terms of thinness and thickness, you can kind of see again, kind of the same thing. I mean, maybe the 14 Pro is a little bit thicker, but because we do have like the flat side on the 14 Pro, it's always going to feel a little bit thicker than the curved side on the 11, so probably one thing to keep in mind. We also do not have a SIM card tray on the iPhone 14 Pro. We do have it on the iPhone 11 on the other side, which is really cool. Lightning ports at the bottom. On the back, very interesting setup too. So with the iPhone 11, we had a standard glass back. Okay, so standard glass back. We had a dual camera setup, wireless charging, and that was a pretty good jump up from the 10R at the time. With the 14 Pro, we now have that triple camera setup. Okay, we have frosted glass back, which is amazing. And we now have the MagSafe, we have wireless charging on both, we have emergency SOS satellite mode and all that good stuff. But when I compare these two backs, I mean, the 14 Pro definitely is, it has a lot of cool features here that I'm really happy about. At their core features, I mean, they're kind of the same thing, but the 14 Pro feels more like a flagship phone. And this one I feel like is going to stand the test of time a lot longer. And it's more surprising that the $699 phone of 2019 is still kind of keeping up a little bit with the $1,000 phone of this day and age. I mean, again, the 14 Pro is definitely much better, but it shares a lot of similarities here too. Now, with the iPhone 14 Pro, you're getting things like 5G, which is cool. You're getting a lot of other features underneath the hood as well, but I will still say the iPhone 11 holds up very, very nicely against other phones like the iPhone 14 Pro. Now, with that being said, in terms of longevity, the iPhone 11 is definitely not going to be lasting as long as the 14 Pro by any means. I mean, this phone is kind of like third in place of being unsupported with software. So it's kind of like in the middle. It's in the middle between the iPhone 10 and 10s and the iPhone 12 and 13. So with the iPhone, 11, this one is third in place to be unsupported. So we have iOS 16 on the iPhone 10, maybe iOS 17 on the iPhone 10s, then iOS 18 on this phone. So regardless, you still have many, many more years to come on this specific device. It's not going to be outdated today. It's not going to be outdated tomorrow. So if you currently own an iPhone 11, you could still keep it. It's not really going anywhere anytime soon. But the 14 Pro, if you want the phone that's going to last the longest amount of time as of right now, just like how I said last year, getting something like the 14 Pro, I mean, the 13 Pro last year or the 14 Pro this year, these phones are going to have the craziest amounts of longevity ahead of them, hopefully. Unless Apple does some really weird stuff, which they've been doing recently. I doubt it though. Hopefully they'll go ahead and support these phones for much longer than the previous generations had. So that kind of covers it up there. Now let's go into a speed comparison between both these phones. The iPhone 11 had that Apple A13 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone 14 Pro has that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6 gigs of RAM. So let's go see which one is the faster one between both. Okay, there we go. All the apps are cleared out in the background, so let's get into it. 14 Pro is here, 11 is here. Phone calls 3, 2, 1. Okay, kind of the same thing. Music 3, 2, 1. And the 14 Pro definitely was a bit faster there for sure. Let's go hop out of here. Let's go and get into their health apps 3, 2, 1. Kind of the same thing too. Let's go and get into settings 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's go and hop out of here. Let's go ahead and get into stocks. Let's do clock 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go and hop out of here. Let's do camera 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go and take a photo 3, 2, 1. And let's go ahead and get into that photo 3, 2, 1. So the 14 Pro has been faster, but the 11 is still keeping up quite well. Hopping out of here, mail 3, 2, 1. Again, 14 Pro is faster. Let's go out of here. Photos 3, 2, 1. Okay, good enough. Let's go out of here. So I'm going to do some of these third-party applications. Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. You can see, I mean, Temple Run 2 did end up finishing overall faster on the iPhone 14 Pro. So this is probably when you're going to see bigger differences when you're loading super heavy intensive games like that. Snake First Blocks 3, 2, 1. But I will say gameplay is probably going to be better overall on the iPhone 14 Pro as well. That was actually very similar. But I will say a lot of games nowadays do have like the ability of changing graphics and stuff. So that's not like one crazy reason why I would go from 11 to a 14 Pro is just better mobile gameplay. So Twitter 3, 2, 1. Make sure you guys follow me on Facebook as well. Yeah, definitely seeing a better performance increase on the iPhone 14 Pro. So that's a really, really good sign. You want to see the newer phones being, exponentially faster. I don't know if it's the right word to say, but it's definitely a faster phone. It's definitely a smoother phone as well. So I will say, I mean, we kind of have an idea of which one is the faster one. The 14 Pro is definitely the faster one, but I think I'm still more surprised with the iPhone 11 and how well of a job this iPhone was able to keep up with this specific device overall. Now, in terms of the camera setups on the back, like I mentioned before, they both have very interesting setups. The iPhone 11 has that dual camera setup, wide and ultra-wide lens, with the iPhone 14 Pro, wide, ultra-wide, and telephoto lens. Both can do 4K at 60 on the back and the front, which is a really nice touch as well. Now, with the iPhone 11, like I mentioned, I mean, this phone came back out in 2019, and this was a pretty good camera at that time. Again, it's not like it's going to be the best camera anymore, but for this day and age, I mean, it still does a decent job at keeping up with probably what you're going to do with it for the most part. Is it going to be able to do, is it going to keep up with the 13 and 14 Pro Maxes? Not really. You're missing things like the telephoto lens, so you can only do 5x zoom. You can still do 0.5x zoom, which is really nice. And I will say the ultra-wide lens is still pretty good. I mean, you can even see my foot down here. So it's really not that bad of a lens. Like, it still does a pretty decent job. The only things that it's kind of missing out on, like the front camera could be a little bit better. You're missing cinematic mode. You really are missing a lot of features compared to Samsung devices. But still, I mean, I would say it's a pretty decent camera for the price tag. It's not really that bad. Now, with something like the 14 Pro, I will say this camera is top notch. It's top of the top. It is easily one of the better cameras you can definitely get on. I will say it's definitely, doesn't seem that big of a jump from the 13 Pro, but regardless, it's still a really good camera. Starting off with a zoom, I mean, you still have 0.5x zoom, but look, you have 15x zoom in here. That is a lot of zooming capability on this type of phone, which is awesome. And you still have things like video mode, but you have cinematic mode, which is really cool. You have, portrait mode, which is awesome. I mean, you have a lot of capability here, which I'm really happy about. So definitely the 14 Pro is the better, camera here. And definitely the 14 Pro is the better phone here. I mean, it's going to be the better phone in pretty much every single area. It's going to be giving you better battery life, better performance, longevity. It's going to be the better phone in every single area, better build quality. But I still think with something like the iPhone 11, this phone kind of surprised me today. I mean, this phone still seems kind of like the better value. If you can buy a phone like this for like $300, this may seem like the better deal in my opinion. Again, it's a little bit of a tricky situation. If you own this phone, I would recommend keeping it. Or if you're on a budget, then I would recommend going for this phone. If you're not on a budget or if you're trying to get a phone and keep it for like as long as possible, you can still kind of keep this phone for a long time too. But to set yourself up right, go for the 14 Pro if you have the money. Or if you don't want to spend $1,000, you can go for an iPhone 13 Pro, and you can get that for maybe around $700. If not now, you can probably get it in the next few months. You can probably get that for 700, 650, the longer you wait, and that might be a better deal for you at that point too. So you still have a few other options. I'd recommend kind of weighing your odds, but that kind of covers it. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.